All right, what is good, folks? We are doing episode 68, and we once again have only two of us, but this time the shittiest person is gone. Chad
That's
is
pretty
gone.
excessive.
I want to. It's all in good fun. I want to, as I always do, want to call him Norndithis, but he insists that we stop doing that, which is fair. I told him to change his name then on his YouTube, but we'll see if he actually does it.
He probably won't.
Yeah, he probably won't. Well, when he's not here, we can talk shit. No big deal. So we both posted an article, so we'll get to that. But the first thing I wanted to start with was just really quickly something Chad posted, which super got me going. And it actually led to me watching 3 videos, because this post that Chad was telling us about was a video. And when I clicked on it and went to the Twitter, I don't know if you have it open, but when I clicked on it and went to that tweet, there's a thread and there's 3 videos, and each one is just as, if not increasingly, upsetting. And actually, the last couple times that it was just me and Chad, I did this thing called Excuse Me What, where I was like, dude, I found this thing this week that made me just say in my mind, like, excuse me, what? So basically, it's just like crazy things that you read that like you don't like. I don't even know how that's real, right? So I love that. If you didn't notice in the Hangouts when Chad posted this, he wrote "Excuse me, what?" because that's what he was referencing.
Okay.
So, anyways, yeah. So, anyways, this definitely made me say "Excuse me, what?" just like Chad. The first thing that Chad posted, this tweet says, "Trump's Secretary of State, America's chief diplomat, Mike Pompeo, said, we will continue to fight these battles," basically referencing war on terror and like global war on terrorism. It is a never ending struggle, ... until the rapture. So I also want to point out really quick, though, these comments were made in 2015. So this is when Mike Pompeo was just a representative from Kansas. He was not the Secretary of State. I don't want to just be like, oh, like this is the things that he says as Secretary of State, because it's not. He said plenty of bad things, in my opinion, already as the Secretary of State, but it's beside the point. So, and he's also clearly at like a church. He's at like a Sunday morning church service too. So when we think about politicians and we think about pandering, right? Like he's at a church on a Sunday morning, probably inside of his district at the time in 2015, right? Like he's not going to go up there, and like this just makes a lot of sense. I'm sure he is Christian too himself. But I'm gonna assume Chad would say, and this is why I say excuse me what to this, because like I almost want to ask you, what do you think? Like, how long is it gonna take before you feel like we're in a society where, I don't want to say that nobody believes in the rapture, but like where it's like not mainstream to be this way? Because do you feel like it's so mainstream to be someone who believes in the rapture? And like, I don't know.
I think it's hard. Well, so we have to define a few things, right? What is mainstream?
Well, I mean, I think the latest poll, like 80% of Americans still call themselves Christians.
Sure.
Or at the very least, calling yourself a Christian is mainstream.
Sure, but I would argue to a large degree, right? The idea of being a Christian nowadays is much different than it was, 50.
Sure. And that's why I emphasize calling yourself. Yes.
Right. I mean, for example, the church you and I grew up in, right? When that church first started, it was very much like you wore a suit and tie. You were ostracized from the community if you didn't go to their school. You were, for lack of any other better word, it was pretty hardcore. It was a hardcore Baptist group. Right. Last time I went there, which was probably 6 or 7 years ago at this point, I saw things there that you would never see when we grew up. Guys with sleeve tattoos, earrings, gauges, nose rings, even mohawks, like you name it. That type of stuff would not have been acceptable back then.
Yeah, but they're still giving a saying until the rapture is still an applause line for sure.
Sure.
So, I mean, I guess what I'm asking you is, do you think those nose ring, mohawk, gauged people don't believe in the rapture? Like, of course they do. That's why they're there. It doesn't matter what they look like.
No, see, that's where I might disagree with you.
Okay,
because
go ahead.
a lot of people that go to churches, I shouldn't say a lot, but a good chunk of them go there for the sense of community.
Agreed.
That's why a lot of people drunk the Kool-Aid down in Jonestown, right? They're not
Not a
there
lot,
to,
but yes, like
they're not there to kill
yes,
themselves
agreed.
and like just because they want to kill themselves, but they
No,
feel a belonging, they feel a sense of belonging, so they're more
agreed.
apt to agree to whatever everyone else is feeling or saying because it makes them feel good.
No question. Yeah.
But back to the original statement, right? Religion, specifically Christianity, has been a part of human civilization for thousands of years. Safe to say, right?
Absolutely.
It's going to take a
Religion
long
itself
time for it to go away, right? Religion itself. I think in
Yeah,
order
definitely.
for this not to be mainstream and to look a little more kooky,
Mm-hmm.
for again, I'm not very good with my words today, but for
No,
it
I like
not
it.
to be
Go ahead.
normal, I think what has to happen is science, quote unquote, has to find a way to develop a culture in order for people to feel like they can aptly release from religion or this idea of religion.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of truth
That's the
to that
difficult
statement. I've
part.
never thought about
So
it that way. I've never thought about like making it a belief in such a way that, yeah.
because right
What's the
now, and this
culture?
is stuff that like
Well, how do you do that though? I don't know.
Sam Harris tries to address. And I don't know if you've read any of his books, but it's clearly written by someone who is a neuroscientist. But the point is that right
It
now
should feel
science is
that way.
very cold. It's very dead. I shouldn't say right now. It has been, right? I think we're making strides to make it feel more comfortable. I think people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, people like Lawrence Krauss, people like that, even David Attenborough, right? Speaking on all of these Planet Earth series and the Blue Planet series,
All
and
good people.
even people back then like Carl Sagan, right? They've understood the concept that people need to feel comfortable with science in a way that science isn't, because the fact of the matter is science is very much factual. It's very much right and wrong. It's very black and white, and a lot of people don't take comfort in that. So
Yeah.
I think we're probably another 100, 200 years away from it being of Christianity not being like this, where until the rapture isn't the applause line anymore. I do think we're
That's
a
fair. And
little
I
ways
wouldn't
away
disagree
from
with
it.
those numbers. We'll see. We'll see.
Um,
I don't think we'll definitely not see it. So
no, you and I won't. No, we'll be
no,
long dead.
absolutely not. So that first tweet, obviously, the biggest thing that clearly triggered probably Chad and me until the rapture part. Geez, but then when I clicked on this tweet, there's a couple more videos from this day.
Okay.
And once again, I want everybody to keep in mind it was 2015. It doesn't excuse what he said. What I'm about to tell you, he said, but it wasn't when he was Secretary of State, right? And I think that does matter a little bit. So this is 2015 when he was congressional representative from Kansas. The next video is about one of the battles. So the tweet says one of the quote unquote battles Pompeo is going to fight until the rapture, and he says this in the video, opposing marriage equality. He's talking about the Obergefell decision, which I guess is maybe probably the cake decision. If it's 2015, I'm going to go ahead and assume if it's about marriage equality and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So dude, and then just in the video, it's so jarring. He's just like, he calls homosexuality just like, I can't remember. Evil. The next tweet, he says, and then the final tweet with the next video, he says, and here's Pompeo endorsing a prayer that called multiculturalism and homosexuality evil. What he said in the video was, we'd endorse perversion and called it an alternative lifestyle. So, he's just calling homosexuals perverts. It's like, oh, dear Jesus, come on,
So I haven't watched.
I know that's ironic that I just said dear Jesus, but it's just, what are we doing? Like, can we just let people do what they want? Come on, they're not hurting you. Get over it, dog.
Well, the one I take actually more of a jarring stance on is this multiculturalism evil.
Yeah, what is that?
What does that mean? I didn't watch the video. What did he say? You say something specific, or?
I watched the video a couple times, but this was a couple hours ago. I
Okay.
couldn't tell you exactly what he said.
I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that.
And I'll post a Twitter link down below in the description of the video for the podcast. But just I don't know. All I remember is listening to the video. It was even worse than even multiculturalism. It like he just made So in the tweet, he makes it explicitly clear, and he's correct that in the video he called homosexuality perversion, and like those people are perverts. Okay, which is already bad enough. Okay, in its own way. But there's definitely, he referred to multiculturalism as something else in the video. Mike Pompeo did, and it was just like, it was almost like worse. I don't remember what it was, but I'll be the first person to raise my hand, even though I lean left, to say that like mixing of cultures and mixing of races and mixing of people is difficult, but it's a goal that's worth achieving, right? And that's always why I've had a lot of respect for this country. We've never claimed that we're perfect. I wouldn't even claim that we're more free than other countries on this planet. But what we've tried to do and what's been beautiful is we've tried to like mix cultures together. We're an immigrant country. Since we've been founded, we try to mix people together and make it work. And like, that's the future. We've struggled with it. Look at our history, but you know, that's what makes us great. So it's just these statements are so jarring. And I just, in the age of Trump, I really hope that there's still enough people that believe that, like, look, at the end of the day, there's some human beings that suck, but most human beings, they're just trying their best, right? And like, we should all be investing in the kids that are going to turn into our future, who grow up in this country, and trying to, like, you know, just the divisiveness just sucks. I think everybody feels that way. So,
well, I think naturally you'll always have divisiveness.
You will,
no matter what.
Yeah.
I think what we need to be doing and what we need to be teaching is how to understand points of view. That's something that we're not very good at, I think.
Sure, acceptance, yeah.
Not acceptance. You don't have to accept it, right? But you have to understand.
Okay, not a good word.
I'm just
open-minded. Open-minded. No, you're right. Open-minded is probably better to use. We need to teach people to be resilient and to go ahead and listen to people that disagree with them, and that's okay, and like have like a respectful dialogue. You know, is that where you're going with that? Because I agree with that. And you know, there's too many people. I don't even think there's too many people that when they get into a conversation with someone they disagree with, they can't handle it. I think that people just avoid it. That's the problem. I think most of the time when even someone who's like super, I bet you if I took like the most super liberal, one of the most super liberal people and one of the most super conservative people, I just plucked them out of like groups of each of those people and sat them down face to face, and they talked face to face, they'd figure out how to have at least a conversation. They wouldn't agree, but they'd figure it out. I think the problem is we don't even try to do that anymore. We just live in this echo chamber, which we've talked about a lot on this pod. We live in this echo chamber, and we don't want to leave that space. And you can do so now, and that's dangerous. Like we need to get people face to face and discussing.
Well, what we need to be doing, I think, is that no matter what your political viewpoint is, no matter what your favorite political pundit is, right? Mm-hmm. We should always be watching and applauding when they invite somebody of a differing opinion onto their show, or when they invite somebody of a differing opinion to write on their website or their blog or their, be on their podcast or any of these things.
It needs to be done in an honest way.
It does need to be done in an honest way, sure, but you also have to understand that somebody who, and you can hear them quite clearly if they're using ambush tactics in a conversation, right? You can voice your opinion as well and say, that's not how we're gonna bridge any understanding, right? Again, I'm not asking for anyone to accept anyone else, because obviously you have the right to do whatever you feel. What I am asking you to do is that you at least try to understand.
Right.
And
there's people on all sides that try to play gotcha, and we all can tell when it happens. Well, I don't want to say we all, but I think me and Chad can tell when it happens, and we're just like, dude, that smells like bullshit. Quit that, come on. So the gotcha stuff is just, it just makes me a little upset. But alrighty. So if you don't mind, I'll run with my article here first.
Please.
I ran into this article. The
article comes from Salon. and it's by Igor Jirish.
I don't know how I don't know how I feel about that. But the
Ho,
title is
ho.
basically, IRS. There's been a lot of cuts to the IRS, and because of that, it's been limiting their ability to do things. And according to this article, it seems that in their limiting of things, they are severely stepping down auditing of the haves. And I don't even want to say stepping up the auditing of the have-nots, but maybe just continuing the have-not auditing, and just because they're getting cutting it where, at least from what this thing says. And
that's where I'll disagree with you. I think they are stepping up audits of the poor.
I sure fucking hope not. I sure fucking hope not.
Well, let's look at it from a practical perspective, right? So according to this article, GOP budget cuts have put the IRS in a situation that it cannot handle what it should be handling. And specifically, when I read the article, what I read is because they don't have the budget to pay enough people. When you go after a wealthy individual, or when you go after a corporation, when it comes to taxes, you better damn well sure you have lawyers and you have all of your T's crossed and your I's dotted. Otherwise, that person or that corporation's lawyers are going to tear you apart. And now you've wasted all that time, money, and effort for what? For nothing, because you lost in court, right? Correct. Now, what's the difference between them and poor people? Well, poor people get a letter in the mail. It's a red letter, and it probably says something to the effect of, you owe $10,000, and poor people shit their pants, and they call the IRS, and then the IRS refers them to some third-party agency to collect on this, right? Or the third-party agency is the one sending this bill. The point here is that unless you give the IRS enough money to fight these battles in court, the natural inclination is for them to go after easy money. And what does that mean? That means scaring poorer people into settling for, and you see these commercials on TV and on the radio all the time. Do you owe $45,000? Well, you could pay $5,000 and get out of it. Why? Because it's easy for the IRS to get the $5,000 than it would be for the $45,000, and it's even easier than to get the $1 million from some corporation. That's what I read.
Yep. And there's a couple things there. So one, I wrote up a lot of points about this article, and one of them was, I said it's easier to audit and come after simpler tax returns, like poor people's, right? Yep. Like, so, and I quoted the article here, literally from the article. Corporations and billionaires have been the biggest beneficiaries of the IRS cuts because large-scale audits require specialized personnel. Noting that the federal government has left 18 to 20% of potential tax revenues uncollected as a result. So, like, yeah, if it's a big corporation, if it's something that's a lot more complicated, that takes a lot more investment. That's not as easy to do. So if you have a lot of cuts to specialized personnel and stuff like that, it's over. So it's just not helpful.
Honestly, this is the same complaint I've had about the SEC. You had the market crash in 2008, and the question is in 2008 and before then, right? From 2000 to 2008, what was the SEC doing?
I don't know.
Let's look at it from
as hell wasted our taxpayer money by doing nothing.
Well, let me argue a point here, right? If you, as the SEC, have to monitor AIG, for example, the largest insurance company in the world, what do you think their books look like?
Complicated? I don't
they
know.
have to be massive.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
Spreadsheets massive, that run for fucking days, right?
Right.
There's no way in hell, with a budget the size of the SEC, could they actually do an appropriate audit on AIG, right? And it's the same thing for the IRS. If you don't have the resources, if you don't have the people or the money, you can't do an appropriate audit on the people that probably should be the ones you're auditing, right?
Right.
It's tough. Because the IRS, at the end of the day, they've got to go back to Congress and say, okay, we got this much dollars, and this is what we got for you.
We also have certain, and I'm not going to name factions because things change and whatever, and that's fine. But we also have certain factions of this country on certain sides of the debate who are like law and order, except when it comes to paying taxes. Look, if you want to have a debate over the tax law and you want to change the tax law and you want to run for office and do that, then please do so. But if it is written on the books a certain way, you should be fucking paying your taxes, because even the poorest among us has to. So you better too, like from the poorest to the richest in this country, pay the taxes that are on the books. If you don't like the taxes on the books, then go ahead and try to affect change. Okay.
Well,
But otherwise, you better be paying exactly what you're supposed to, because I do. I file, I pay, I mean, I get a return still. There's a lot of us that may, but they're just whatever, just follow the law. So stupid. You don't like it, then go change it. But just makes me upset, and it makes me upset when I see that like the federal government should. The federal government should have enough leeway to say like, to do the exact job we need to do in collecting all the taxes we need X amount of people. Then we should hire that X amount. It shouldn't be like, this year we're only going to fund the IRS to this extent, and we might miss out a lot of tax money because of that. Then why are we doing that? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Just frustrating. So
yeah, I hear you.
It's hard to strike that balance, by the way, before I let you go. It's hard to strike that balance, and I get that too. But I just wish we could get there. It's a fantasy, but
I would like to think that it's not a fantasy, but I definitely get where you're coming from when you say that. Yeah. I do. At the end of the day, it's pretty cut and dry, right? If you want to go after people who are breaking the law, then you need the money, you need the resources, because the fact of the matter is they are big and they are powerful as well.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help when you have. I mean, weren't people making these allegations too a long time ago that the IRS was investigating certain 501c3s that were supporting like Republican causes and vice versa? Wasn't claims the other way as well at one point or another?
Mm-hmm.
Like audits were being done on like Tea Party candidates or people who were supporting Tea Party things.
Yeah, but look,
well, my point is,
I hate to almost be conservative with this. Hang on, just let me go for 1 second. I hate to almost be conservative with this argument. I don't even want to say conservative, but I hate to be this person to say this. But like, if you weren't breaking the law, then should you be afraid of being under scrutiny? Like,
no, I understand that, but
yeah, go ahead.
At the same time, I think that when politicians use the IRS as a tool in that manner,
I agree. That's gross.
I'll tell you what it is specifically. Is I have nothing to hide, but you're taking up my time and my resources and my energy over something that
I agree.
Audited. Why is it this sect of people, this group of people, this? You know what I mean?
Right. If there's anything past the balance that needs to be sought to be struck between having enough agents to collect what we should and wasting, then you'd think that there wouldn't be problems like, why are these all of a sudden just these conservative Tea Party movements getting so scrutinized, so basically, like, if we're spending more than we should to make sure they're all paying their taxes, because maybe a lot of them are paying already like they're supposed to, then yeah, like, that's stupid and that's wrong. And
the point here is, though, is that
it's difficult to be nonpartisan, though.
What I don't like it is. It is. What I don't like is that you're using the IRS as a political tool. The Democrats are doing, the Republicans are doing it, and it's difficult when you get a phone call from, and I'm just imagining this may have happened at one point, but you're the director of the IRS, right? You get a phone call from Senator so-and-so who's like, listen, I know you guys are investigating this company or this person. Is there any way that we can back off a little bit on it? Otherwise, I'll bring XYZ bill to the floor, which will gut the shit out of the IRS. And they might have some actual political power behind it. Now, you as the director of the IRS, trying to do what's in the best interest of your group, has to make a difficult decision there, right?
Mm-hmm.
That may have happened at one point. Whether it was now or yesterday or 50 years ago or whatever. When you put people in those type of positions, that they have to make a choice of how they're going to run their agency based on partisan politics, this is what we end up with, to your point. And it's garbage. It's garbage across the board.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the feeling that I get is, well, we'll just cut your budget then. Fuck you. It's inappropriate, quite frankly, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm.
That
it is.
That they can play this game, right?
That's why everybody always wishes there's a neutral,
right?
Fully
at the same time,
to step in and go ahead.
Right. At the same time, I think also what's difficult is, to your point, what you're saying is if you break the law, you should pay for it, right?
Correct.
Let's talk about police officers, right? Are they going to, pull over everybody with a doobie and arrest them for it? No, that would be a waste of time and resources,
but
right?
we can't talk about the scale.
Sure. There is a scale here. There's a 1-to-1 comparison to me.
Of course,
right? Are you gonna pull over that person and throw them in jail? Some cops might, but at the same time, a lot of cops won't.
For a taillight out, no. You literally can't throw someone in jail for a taillight out. Stop. You can pull someone over with a taillight out and then find something to put them in jail for. Oh, I hope you can't put people in jail for a doobie anymore. No, in New York it's decriminalized. In most of the country it's I hope. But I get your point.
Okay, I was making. Let me finish my point. Right?
Sure.
Are you gonna go after the kid who's smoking a doobie, or are you gonna go after the person dealing hundreds of thousands of pounds of this shit?
Right.
And when you do that, there's a lot more time and resource. That's where I'm getting.
Right.
That's where I'm getting. This is that. Why is it that you're caring so much about people who barely make $40,000 a year, or whatever the number is?
And that was my base point and thought when reading this. So yes. Mm-hmm.
And that's the comparison that I would draw, because some people might argue, well, Cyril, you're asking that everyone who breaks the law is punished, and that's just not possible. That's not always possible.
That's fine.
And in defense of that, I would say what I just said.
Right. There's that defense. There's also another defense. There's like the idea that, and this kind of links with yours, the idea that like there's a especially when it comes to like economics, like, are you going to punish people who can barely afford to live economically? That doesn't make any sense. If they need to be punished, like, they're already fucking struggling. Like, what are you doing when you're, like, if you're going to go after them for their money, like, that just doesn't make sense. Just doesn't make sense. You're going after people who don't have that much capital, and the punishment's going to be taking their capital. It's like, what? Like, okay. So it's just a lot of confusion, and I would hope that they work from, I don't even want to say that from the top down, because that sounds divisive, but everybody knows what I mean. Like, those of us that are privileged, and a lot of us work towards being that way, and that's fine, and people earn that, and that's fine, okay? But that doesn't mean you can't be under scrutiny, and make sure that you're, paying your fair share, because we all have to. So that's all.
I hear you.
All right. We got one last one. Let's have you open up on yours. You want to go ahead?
Yeah. So Senator Bernie Sanders, independent from Vermont, and Kirsten Gillibrand, Democrat from New York, are trying to get some legislation going on ESOPs, which is I'll read this right from the article here. This is from The Intercept, written by Rachel Cohen on December 26, 2018. It's a retirement vehicle that allows a business owner to sell their company stock to a trust co-owned by the company's employees. The company typically purchases the owner's share with a loan, divides the shares amongst the staff, and then repay the debt annually with pre-tax payments from the company's profits. When a worker leaves or retires, the company buys back that worker's stock at fair market value, giving them a slice of the company's capital earnings. And hopefully, the goal here is what this does is it gives employees a chance to own and a chance to be a larger part of the day-to-day earnings of the company, specifically when it comes to retirement.
Right.
And if I go down to the bottom, there was a correction on this article. I don't know if you saw it, Sarah, but
I did not.
The correction is pretty significant. This article has been updated to reflect that workers at ESOP companies, this plan that they're trying to advance here, have retirement accounts that are 2.2 times, not 2.2%, larger than those workers at traditionally owned companies.
Oh, so I thought I read 2.2 times.
Okay,
so
I read it as 2.2%, which initially was like,
tiny.
Like,
it's tiny.
Is it worth all of this for 2.2%? But it's 2.2 times earnings, which when it comes to retirement might be the difference between being able to not work at Walmart and to enjoy your retirement.
Yeah.
So the reason why I brought this one to the table was because of specifically a semi-disagreement Cyril and I had probably about a week or two ago. Actually, I think Chad was on your side on that one.
It's a continuing pod theme. Yep.
When it comes to
with all three of us, yeah.
Right, when it comes to employees,
but that's okay.
Specifically, when it comes to unions, and I felt like, and I've said this before, I'm not a super big fan of unions. I feel that they have bigger problems than they do actual solutions today.
Especially when they get too big.
Today, hold on. Today is my specific thing. You come to me back in the 70s or even before then, I think that they did a ton of good. But all the good
I
they
don't know what the
did,
difference is now, but okay.
well, I don't think they're as much needed anymore when it comes to specific things. But anyway, that's a whole other.
Sure. Yeah.
Specifically, what we're talking about is how employees can be more a part of the company and be able to share in the capital gains of that company. This is a way to me that makes sense. The downside to it right now, and the only downside, is the fact that ESOPs are complicated vehicles, and typically speaking, when an owner sends, because there's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot of laws that are in place that you have to make sure that you're not breaking laws, so that your company doesn't get a fine or things like that.
In what way though? Why?
It's a little more complicated.
Okay.
I don't understand.
If it is complicated, then it's only because of the bullshit that's been written by the government. This shouldn't be complicated. I don't give a shit if like this is great. Like, have your employees profit from the overall profits of the company.
Here, I'll read.
Why should an overall owner take 100% of the profits? That's just, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, employees put a lot of time, blood, sweat, and tears into that company as well. Everybody should share in it. I'm not asking for the owner to have the same percentage as every other worker. Nobody's asking for that. But this sounds great. Like, it sounds like ESOPs bridge the disconnect of the profits only going to the owner.
Well, I think that's why Sanders and Gillibrand are trying to get this legislation through, is to make it a more well-known and less complicated thing.
And I wrote this, and really quickly, I wrote this, and I don't know why I didn't follow up on it. Yep. And I want to hear what you want to say if you followed up on it.
Sure.
It said in the article, successful model in Vermont already. Yep. I wrote, maybe we can look this up. What does the Vermont model look like? But because you had said that, I just wanted to say, yeah, it from the article, it said that there is a successful Vermont model already.
So there's a few things that can be risky with it, right? In the article, it talks about how most people with ESOPs also have 401k, right? And the reason why is because you want to make sure that your entire fate is not tied up into one company.
Yep.
Right. Heaven forbid that company goes back. And of course, this article uses the worst example ever, which is Enron.
But it just used the most extreme one. But yeah, go ahead.
It is the most extreme one, hands down. But if we keep going down, there's this gentleman, Rogers, from the National Center for Employee Ownership. He has a few theories why ESOPs aren't more well known. Some of it he chalks up to the incentives of the business advisor world. Right? If you're a broker, like an investment banker or personal wealth advisor, the fees you take home at the end of the day would be higher if you encourage your client to sell their company to a private equity firm.
That makes me not happy.
Rather than your employees, which, okay, so now we can point something out. Why is it, and I haven't done the research on this, but that would be a question, right? Why is the advisor getting more money if he sells it to an investment banker or a private equity firm or something like that? I don't know the answer to that, but apparently they do. Financial advisors also tend to advise owners on things that they know how to do. ESOPs are highly regulated, complex structure. If you as a CPA advise a business owner to sell to their employees, you're probably advising them on something you personally don't know how to do. That's a problem, right?
Yeah, but that's only a problem because these people have been taking the money and not also balancing that with doing the right thing, as far as like, hey, these employees need.
But as someone who's offering
share in the
financial advice, someone who's actually offering that advice, if they've never been a part of an ESOP, if they've never been educated on how they work, that would be a problem, because if I don't know them, I'm not going to advise you to do that.
Then how about this? How about if the government thinks this will be a lot better, then do it, and mandatory education, the government will pay for it because the government sees it as a benefit to workers. So the government can say, hey,
that's the best way to go about it. I think the best way to go about it is make ESOPs the more financially apt method of selling your company.
So you would regulate and structure so that ESOPs are
the easy choice.
Then I actually agree with that too. That would be a solution as well.
Because I think that's more incentive. Because
if you're about to go hard in like a disagreement mode here, but no, dude, I agree with that.
Because you and I come from a perspective of, you think that, and it's not wrong. I merely see this.
I'll comment.
You think that education, right, or having the government educate people on what something is so that way there's more exposure is your way of trying to get to solve a problem. And I'm not disagreeing with it. I think the more practical way...
Basically, yes, but go ahead.
Okay, I'm paraphrasing. I think to me, typically speaking, the practical way of doing it is finding what the actual incentives are for people and changing it so that they are more likely to make that choice than the other.
The question's not what's more effective, because yours is more effective. Like, if you're going to regulate and structure society and say, we're making this decision because we think this will be better for us, that's fine. But that means you are controlling a little bit.
You are. So I'm not disagreeing.
Right.
You're right.
And I would, especially in the age of Trump, I always lean towards education because I don't know who our leadership is. Might we have great leadership sometimes that would point us in the right direction and could structure things and we can trust them? Maybe, yes. But, there's a lot of times we just have grifters and these people get in office that are just like doing things for themselves. Right. And so I don't trust that. And so I'd rather just education. Look, and that also makes me the kind of person that accepts that we can't make things perfect. Get over it. Like, we have to work with reality. So there's a lot of that going on there.
True. But here, this next paragraph is where my explanation comes into play, I feel like. From the owner's perspective, selling one's company to an outside firm is generally going to be a more lucrative option and often easier than creating an ESOP. And it's hard for the business owner to say no to more money. Right?
And I don't blame them.
So to me, that's
where the structuring comes in.
That incentive, right, where it's better for you if you sell it back to the employees as opposed to a private equity firm.
Right.
That's to me where you would be able to make that change to make it more palatable.
If you can identify a public good for your constituents, that if you put a little government power behind it would help it, then sure, absolutely. Absolutely.
Further complicating ESOPs for some scandals that unfortunately happened. So when United Airlines went bankrupt, some employees had ESOP stock that was crap, and in some other cases...
Well, is that a scandal, or is that just like that's why you have a 401k, right? That's why you diversify? Right?
True, but maybe... I don't know the details of this specifically, but they point out that specific... I think they called it a scandal just because it went bankrupt and there was an ESOP associated with it. So I don't know if it's really a scandal per se, but that's just how they wrote it. And then in some other cases, owners who sold their company to employees had their businesses assessed at way too high of a value. So when they sold their shares, they made off like bandits and left the workers paying an outsized loan. That's a real... Okay, that makes sense.
It's a huge problem. Yeah.
It continues on. The Labor Department has been cracking down on that overvaluation issue.
Right.
Well, apparently the Labor Department has done something about it, and ESOP advocates say worker safeguards have grown to be far more defined. But at the same time, that right there also might be the reason why it's more lucrative to sell to a private equity firm, because you've got to go now through the Labor Department to prove that your business is valued in X and X and X amount of dollars because of X, Y, and Z, whereas a private equity firm is responsible for that.
But that still makes me sick that when it's a whole bunch of workers, they'll come in and make sure it's right. But when you're just, because think about it, if you're selling it and it's overvalued, you're still getting screwed. Maybe it's not the workers at that point, but if you're selling it and it's overvalued, that person who's buying it might be getting screwed. Someone still gets screwed in that.
Sure, but at the same time, there's also speculation too.
Crack down on. Figure that out.
There's also speculation too, though, that people engage in, and that's what's great about America is that you can do that if you want. You're completely on your own if you want to do something like that. Go for it. You want to spend $1 million to buy a hamburger? Go for it. No one's going to stop you.
Every time I hear about integrity issues in our world, and I hear about gerrymandering integrity issues and stuff like that, I'm like, just create a panel that has people from all sides and make them come to an agreement. Get an independent panel and just get in there and that's nonpartisan and figure it out. Don't put these partisan idiots in charge of things that are come on,
everyone's partisan. And this isn't, we're not
everyone is partisan, but that doesn't mean you can't get together a panel of everybody and say guess what? You have to make a decision. And that kind of forces people to find somewhere, it's just, I don't know.
But we're not even talking about a partisan thing. You're talking about one person selling a company to somebody else at too high of a value.
Well, no, I know.
Some people would call that being a good salesman, So.
Yes, and there are certain ways in which that would ring true without being morally bankrupt, but there are also ways where that's morally bankrupt. And like, I don't know.
Yeah, but at the same
That's
time,
why the context always matters. Of course it does.
It does. But
that's why we need to have an independent, like, reviewing body that, you know, I don't know. Which costs money, but I mean, what does that even mean? It doesn't have to be government. It doesn't have to, like, we have markets already of reviewing things like Yelp and the Better Business Bureau. There's all kinds of things that just a free market will.
All right.
Yeah.
The Better Business Bureau.
I think that's government, maybe, but I don't know.
I don't think it is.
Maybe not. Maybe it works with them too.
I've had personally very poor experiences with the Better Business Bureau. When I was working at a small IT company not too long ago, we had reached out to them to set up like a, for people to give feedback and whatever.
Okay.
They charge a ton of money to make sure that your rating is A+.
And it could be. And look, this is the other side of a free market. You could rise to power by having integrity, but then once you're so big, things can be corrupt. That happens with big governments, come on, we always talk about this, right? So it wouldn't surprise me that the BBB got to where they were because they had integrity and like people could trust them and they spread because of that.
I hear you.
But then at some point it changed and new leadership took over and they just took advantage. I believe it.
I get you. Right. But I would use another one just as a joke. Mm-hmm. Who's JD Power? Do you know who JD Power is?
JD Power and Associates, that Chevys.
Why the fuck do they hand out so many awards for the most bullshit thing?
They hand out awards for like.
Have you seen that Chevy commercial? All models based on 2015. Then why are the 2018 models out? Why are you making JD Power awards all over your commercial for 2015 when you have 2018 models on the commercial?
I wrote one more thing. I want to hear what you think before we end this.
Sure.
I wrote, or actually, this is from the article. Sobering statistics about growing wealth inequality, like that the top 10% of households owns 80% of the financial assets and the top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 95% combined, underscore the need for economists, activists, and policymakers to figure out ways to counteract these trends. And what I want to say about that is, I think that's correct generally, right? Like generally, I think that's correct. I do think that we can do better with inequality. I think that we have some issues with explosive growth and explosive wealth and distribution issues, whatever. But what I said was, I'm afraid that some of us in our society don't even agree with that. I feel like there is a large amount of people who would even disagree that inequality is like a problem right now. And I think that is super difficult for the conversation because if you can't even agree on that base problem, like there's nothing to talk about. If you get to just say there's no inequality problem, this is how things should look, and you get to just say that, it's like, I don't know, like that's, I think there's a lot more people than we think, or I think at least. There's just a lot of people that are like that. So I don't know. Like, I feel like if there was like let's say Bernie is a candidate for president in 2020 and he's like railing against inequality, there's probably enough people that are just like, socialist and it's not even an issue. And, I don't know. I could be wrong. Any thoughts or no?
That's a tough one, man. For me. Just because I certainly wouldn't say that inequality is not a problem by any means. Inequality is absolutely a problem. I think that from the perspective that you're coming from, the one thing that I think makes America also so great is the fact that even though you're dirt ass poor, you can still have some pretty legit and potentially real dreams of aspiring of moving up in social class or financially, I should say,
I agree.
Economic class.
Of course, I agree with that. Yeah.
And I think that's why people tend to ignore some of our inequalities, because we do have a bit more freedom than most. It's certainly not absolute, but we have more freedom than most for people to move in and out of certain socioeconomic classes.
And I agree. And really quickly, I have high hopes, not for government to be able to one day make society such that every single person in our country has basic needs fulfilled, but technology. Because as we create more wealth and get better at manipulating our environments, even the poorest among us might have enough food, water, shelter someday. That's what I dream about. And I feel like technology will get us there much more so than government will, or like redistribution will.
Yeah, I mean, certainly.
Yeah.
You're 100% correct. I think what's interesting though is what happens to our society when we all are decently fed, clothed, and have shelter and water, right? What happens then to our society? That's what I find interesting thinking about.
Well, your base needs should be fulfilled, and then after that, that's where you compete on a scale, right? Like that's my dream world. Everybody has their basic needs fulfilled, and then from there you compete for more. And now that means we basically live in a society where there's such extreme wealth that we could provide for everybody, even on that basic scale, which, let's be honest, right now we don't, well, not that we couldn't, but we don't do well with, for the whole world. We don't. So we might never get to that day.
I disagree. I think we will, just because of technology.
Maybe.
My fear is that
That's
technology falls into the hands of the few.
Right, and that's right. That's a problem too.
Fortunately, at least typically speaking, most people who work in technology become rich so quickly that they don't become hardened conservatives. That's been a theory I've heard before, right? Back in the way back in the day, people were born and grew up as liberals, and then as soon as they had some money in their older years, they became conservatives.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look at look at a Mark Zuckerberg, look at a Bill Gates, like these guys became billionaires overnight. They didn't have the time to become hardened to the idea of how taxes work and how the government's screwing you over.
Just say
they just became so rich that it didn't matter to them. Is it interesting?
Can I just say though, I super bristle at that because like, and I'm not trying to sit on my high horse, but this is literally how I think. Like,
sure, get off your high horse first of all.
You should be just. You shouldn't be this person that like all of a sudden is like liberal then conservative on taxes just because it benefits you. Like nobody has integrity. That makes no sense to me.
Well,
like
what do you mean?
There will never be, I promise you right now, as I sit here, I will be successful doing something in some way in my lifetime. There's just too much here. Boom, it's going to happen. All right.
Okay.
But even when that happens, even as we get there, for you, you're already very successful. Your family's getting there. As we get there, like I don't have a problem with like paying taxes and not evading and like giving back and like understanding that people need help and that like if I am privileged, then I should pay a little more. I can enjoy my privilege, but pay a little more so that everybody has the same equality of opportunity to get where I am. Like nobody understands that. Everybody who gets rich just all of a sudden wants to just fight to like keep all their money.
No.
That's crazy. Go ahead.
I think people understand that, but I also think that people who become wealthy also have a sense of, well, I know what the fuck I'm doing because I'm wealthy, and the government has no idea how to spend this money, so I don't want to give them this money. I'd rather do it my own way. Look at Bill Gates. Yeah, sure, he pays taxes, but look at all the work he does outside of the government. Why does he do that? He does it because he doesn't think the government knows what the fuck they're doing. And I think generally speaking, that's how a lot of people are
against that.
Okay.
Social Security has never missed a payment. There's been so many things that this government has done.
Yeah, hold on. You're talking about Social Security. What stuff is?
I bristle at that shit. Go ahead.
But that's true. You look at it from the perspective of somebody who's ultra competitive and been extremely successful in every aspect of their life, right?
I would argue the American government is one of those things that has been extremely successful.
I'm not saying it hasn't.
Sure.
I'm not saying it hasn't, but when I look at it from the perspective of myself, let's say I become the CEO of a huge telecoms corporation and I make millions of dollars a year and I'm super successful and I've built this company from the ground up and blah, 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 right? Fill in all the blanks. Me as a person singularly believe at that moment, most likely, that I could probably do things better than most people, right? That's a natural way of humans perceiving themselves. And because of that, today at least, a lot of richer people like a Warren Buffett, like a Bill Gates, like Mark Zuckerberg are spending time doing non-government organizations work. You know, Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation, what do? Don't they do vaccines and water and food to all sorts of poor countries and education? They do that because they think the UN doesn't do a good job at it. They do that because they want to spend that money the way they see fit, not the way that the government sees fit. You know, I'm trying to think and look at it from a perspective of their viewpoint, and that's where I kind of land on that.
And let me respond. Let me respond to that viewpoint. And oh my goodness, here I go. Okay, look, you're gonna be born and raised in this country.
Yeah.
Be Bill Gates, be Steve Jobs, be any of these people that has created tremendous wealth. Be is Jeff Bezos, whoever. You're gonna look around you. You're gonna go through public school, private school, whatever. You're gonna go through school. You're gonna learn about the history of this country. You're gonna learn about all the great people that have come through, all the shoulders we stand on. You're gonna travel on the roads that we've built through the government that has done tons of things for hundreds of years. And you're gonna do one thing that creates a ton of wealth, and you're gonna look around and sniff your farts so fucking hard that you're gonna act like you're better than that. And talk about how, I shouldn't have to do this because I think I can do better than hundreds of years of American history of some of the greatest people we've known, a government that has fought for human rights, for all of these things, and you're going to breathe your farts in a room so hard that you think you're better than that? I can't. That's all. I can't.
That's fair, but our president is also Donald Trump.
That's fine, though. Whatever we vote, whatever we've created.
No, I get that. I get where you're coming from, but I think you're missing the ultra competitive mentality of people who become that wealthy. They don't become that wealthy just because they're sitting on their couch by themselves all fucking day. I'll use another example. What about LeBron James? How do you feel about LeBron James?
He's a good dude. That's built a good for him. Like,
who's built
just a huge like I feel the same about LeBron James that I do for Jeff Bezos, for a Bill Gates. These people have done things that have created tremendous amounts of wealth.
Right.
And that's okay. That is perfectly fine. Markets are a wonderful thing. Building companies are a wonderful thing. Especially these people create jobs. They do give back a lot. They do. I'm pushing back against that mentality. If what you're saying is right, I'm pushing back against that extremely, what I see as very selfish mentality that is just seen as even though I have created tremendous wealth in a modern society just by doing one or two things really well, and it's a big complex society. Nope. That just means I'm better than everybody else and I can do things better than this whole thing that we've built. That's what I'm pushing back on. I'm pushing back on that selfishness.
I'm
should not be that selfish.
Okay.
You should pay your taxes to the American government that has done great things, not perfect, but will continue to do things better than every other country on this planet. And you know what I'm saying? Like, I just get frustrated with that selfish mentality.
But okay, so as I was saying before, right, with LeBron James, why is he creating a private charter school in Cleveland and giving free education to kids?
He built a public school in Akron.
Okay, public school, sure.
It is a public school. It is.
Okay.
In Akron.
Okay. Well, why wasn't that money distributed amongst the entirety of America for education? Why just there?
We can go ahead and talk about the cost of that school and about spreading it to everybody in America, but that really doesn't seem
that effective. Why does Cleveland get it? Why does Akron get it?
Because he's from there.
Well, that's not fair to everybody else. How dare he?
That's ridiculous.
Make that assumption and say,
but why are you even saying that? What are you pushing back against?
I'm just making a point here. It sounds like you don't like when people spend their money where they want to spend it.
That's not what I'm saying. Good for LeBron for opening a public school and trying to do better.
But why aren't you saying that about Bill Gates? Why aren't you saying that about anybody else who does the same thing?
Bill Gates has done. And how about this? Bill Gates has done. Let's definitely not throw Bill Gates under the bus. Let's definitely not throw Warren Buffett under the bus. People who have given and pledged to give a lot of their wealth away. They have pledged to give all their wealth away.
Right.
Because what is inheritance but privilege? Right. So they've pledged to give a lot of their wealth away. And I respect them for that. I'm more talking about the society we built and these people that we don't talk about that do have a lot of money, that get away with not giving any of it back because they sniff their own farts. And that's fine because you think you can do better. But a lot of these people probably don't even donate their money. Like, human beings are selfish. Right.
You're 100% correct.
Yeah. Like we have to admit reality. And that reality is human beings are selfish. What does that mean? That means we have to assume that unless we're hunting the taxes that these people are supposed to pay, they're going to try to get away with not paying it. And if you think that every dime that's not paid towards taxes is done in good faith and given to charities, that's fucking stupid. That's not the case.
I'm trying to imply.
No, I know that's not, but I'm just emphasizing my point with that. It's like, come on, don't be so selfish. This is a selfish mentality. It seems like a privileged mentality to me. And that's okay to be someone who claims that they've worked hard to get where you are, because most people probably have. Come on, we're still part of a team here. Pay taxes. Government does good things. We pay for schools. We pay for, come on. You can't do that all on your own. Just like you said, LeBron James can't finance all of public schools on his own. Obviously, that's why we have the government. That's why you should pay your taxes. LeBron James has paid his taxes. He doesn't complain about that. At least I haven't heard that. Of course he has, or else he'd be in jail.
He's probably gotten out of paying a lot of taxes.
Maybe because he's rich. That's not wrong. Right. That's absolutely correct.
But you're saying, well, okay, never mind.
No, that's right. I mean, but I mean, I would say probably he has paid his taxes because his character and what he's done in his public life makes it seem like he has. But it doesn't mean he has. But still, it's the point of like, pay your taxes because it does good things, and you should be willing to invest back in your society. We live in these times, especially in these Donald Trump times, and I'm not trying to call him out specifically, but we do live in these times where people feel like I shouldn't have to pay taxes at all. I've earned this. Like, stop playing. Look at our history. Paying taxes should be almost a noble cause. It shouldn't be abused, of course not, but you should be proud of investing in infrastructure and in education and in all these wonderful things that make our country better for tomorrow. What's going on with this selfish mentality? It's disgusting.
Yeah, that's always been people. That's just people. That's people.
Yeah, but how do you think we got educations? That was a public school. How do you think our parents even existed? Mom got SSD a lot. Okay,
I'm not disagreeing with you.
I know you're not. I'm going on a rant here.
I know.
No, it's not towards you. It's not. It really isn't. There is one thing.
I'm merely attempting to explain why people feel the way they do, and they feel privileged because they grew up here. That's the side effect of being born in America. You think you're owed something that you're not.
Dude, and how about this? Even the poorest among us is privileged compared to other people on this planet. Yes, they are. Certainly. And I absolutely understand that, and I agree. I wish we had more of a team mentality, not a communist one. But we do live in these times that feel very selfish.
It's okay.
What's that?
I said it's okay to admit that you're a commie.
No, I do feel like we live in these times that are very selfish. It feels selfish, and it feels like a lot of people would rather not even pay a dime in taxes. Listen, it's like, do you know what you're investing in? Come on.
I hear you. It feels selfish now. But it's always been selfish. That has never changed. Whether you want to admit it or not.
No, I know. Human nature.
Changed. Right.
I know.
And I think the thing that puts a sour taste in people's mouth is this idea that, politicians get to spend all that money on a lavish office and all the bullshit that they don't need, which has happened once or twice. It has. But because you have those, things like that, people think of, it's unfortunate, but it's true.